Our afternoon begins with a panel discussion on carbon management for the lignite industry. The panel is moderated by Brent Sanford, the former Lieutenant Governor of North Dakota and former Mayor of Watford City, who has founded two firms, Sanford Consulting LLC and Sanford Ventures LLC, and is consulting with Minnkota Power Cooperative on Project Tundra. Sanford is also working with the North Dakota Petroleum Council to bring refugees from Ukraine to come work here in the state of North Dakota. Joining Sanford on stage are Stacy Tschider of Rainbow Energy, Craig Bleth of Minnkota Power Cooperative, and Jason Bohrer of the Lignite Energy Council. Stacy Tschider has strategically built and ran a successful business empire across the United States, Canada, and Mexico. His portfolio in the North American markets have over a quarter century of prominent success in leading the wholesale electricity and natural gas, retail natural gas, propane, oil, and real estate industries. Stacy is a founder of Rainbow Energy Center and Nexus Line. He was instrumental in leading the Rainbow Energy Center team in the purchase of Coal Creek Station, which is a 1,151 megawatt power plant. He also played a huge role in the Nexus Line purchase of the HVDC facilities containing the 436-mile high-voltage direct current transmission line. These acquisitions will not only pave the way in carbon capture and storage technology, but more importantly, save over 600 jobs with an estimated impact of $1.5 billion in local North Dakota communities. These foundational developments are near and dear to his heart, as unlocking the potential of his local community brings a great level of purpose in his entrepreneurial journey. Craig Bleth is a 1998 graduate of the University of North Dakota and is a registered civil engineer in the state of North Dakota. Craig has been with Minnkota Power Cooperative for 33 years, with most of that time spent in the environmental arena and plant management. Craig is now Minnkota's Vice President of Project Development and is also the Tundra Project Manager. Jason Bohrer's background as an attorney, a communications director for the Idaho Republican Party, and as Chief of Staff to U.S. Representative Raul Labrador, provide a diverse skill set in his role as President and Chief Executive Officer of the Lignite Energy Council. He is a graduate of North Dakota State University and earned his law degree from George Mason University. Prior to joining the Lignite Energy Council in 2013, Bohrer worked 9 years in Washington, D.C. Our panelists will provide some remarks and overview of the topic and then engage in moderator-led discussion. We will then be opening the panel to audience questions, so make certain to take advantage of that when the moment comes. Please help me welcome our panelists.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you all for being here today. So obviously it's a very important topic for this industry, and not only this industry, but we'd like to bring out the fact that it's for the entire state, region, country, and it's not just for lignite, it's not just for coal. This is something that if you look at the headlines in E&E news, you look at the headlines for petroleum news, it's a hot topic in the petroleum industry, and it's becoming a hot topic in the agricultural industry. So to get some of the truth out there is very important. And these experts we have on the stage will help us do some of that today. And what we're going to do is give them each 10 minutes to describe. We'll let Jason describe how the industry is looking at this, then we'll let Stacy and Craig describe what Rainbow's doing for carbon capture at Coal Creek, and also of course, what Craig is leading on Project Tundra over in Center. So the thing that's important to note is this is already happening. And it's not only just happening in these projects that are underway, but we are already putting CO2 into the ground in our ethanol industry at Red Trail in Richardson. We are already putting CO2 into the ground for bringing out more oil in what's called enhanced oil recovery in the Bowman, North Dakota area with the Denbury project. And so the more you hear about this topic and those doubters say it doesn't work, it's not going to be done, it's just something that the green agenda wants to happen, I would really question that. Is an ethanol plant in Richardson, is an oil field in Bowman, North Dakota, are those part of the green agenda, or is that actually to make more money? and produce more ethanol, make more money for that ethanol, produce more oil, and make more money. So this is something that is a real solution for the future of these industries, and today we have some experts that are taking part in this lignite industry. So without further ado, I'm gonna have Jason back clean up. So we'll let Stacy begin and tell us what Rainbow's doing for carbon management, and then Craig next for Project Tundra. Stacy.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Brent. I didn't know if I should go to this podium, or is there any way? I can. Excellent. Well, good. Well, welcome everybody. It's sure a great day to be here and to talk a little bit about what we're doing at Coal Creek Station. A little closer. It's very exciting times to be in the coal business. I know that some of the conversations that were talked about earlier with the EPA and some of the challenges we have, and I can say that the vision that we laid out 3 years ago, specific to Coal Creek Station, is the same vision we have today. And that vision is make sure that we keep that plant in operation, not just for 5 years or 10 years, but for the long term. And that also includes what a couple I call extrinsic projects. And one of them is the carbon capture, which I'll talk about. One of them is also the monetizing of the HVDC power line that goes from Coal Creek down to Minneapolis, which includes a wind project about 400 megawatts. And then also we have some data. And so when you look at all those opportunities I look at, they're very, very exciting, and the future of Coal Creek is very bright. But it does come with some challenges that we've been talking about, and how do we work through that? North Dakota as a whole is pulling in the right direction. I think collectively, with all the utilities recognizing how important lignite is for North Dakota, that we all need to pull in the same direction. So we talk about carbon today, and we talk about basically, well, actually, I get to use slides. I just don't talk. We talk about carbon. I just want everybody to look at it in a different way. In the way we look at carbon is it is a commodity. It is value. It is so important. And all those out there that say it's a waste product, and as Brent was talking about what we're doing already at Red Trail, what Gerald was doing over there, Dunbury, and what Craig at Minnkota will be doing over at Tundra, what we're going to be doing at Coal Creek. This is one of the biggest opportunities North Dakota has. And relative to put it in size, say we produce about 4.9 million barrels of oil a day. That's about the same amount of CO2 that we have in the United States. Now, I'm a realist. I know we can't capture 100% of that. But relative to the 45Q, which is $85 a ton, crude this morning, that's at $82 a barrel, that's the size of this market. This is a huge opportunity for North Dakota. It reminds me of where we were at. We're an oil and gas producer 15 years ago when we started talking about this Bakken. We started talking about fracking. And people looked at us and just shook their head. It's like, really? Look what that has done for North Dakota. I also look at what's happening, and just so everybody knows, that was a technology play, one that has served North Dakota extremely well, brought a lot of economic development to the state. And so I see carbon capture, I see CO2 as a commodity and as a value. And in the future, when we got to be very careful, because we look at it as a value. And technology will drive that, but in the future, people are probably going to want to sell it to us rather than give it to us. And so we always got to be careful on that. But let me just go through here. For those that don't know, Rainbow is Rainbow Energy Center is an independent power producer. We are based in Bismarck, North Dakota. For those that don't know, we had purchased Coal Creek Station from GRE along with the Nexus line. We're so proud that we were able to save over 600 jobs. And they mentioned earlier about the $1.5 billion impact to the state, and that's per year. When we look at CO2, when I talk about the wind project, when I talk about the data that Jeff Johnson, our vice president, is working on, I look at tripling that. That $1.5 billion can turn into the $4.5 billion. It's a massive impact to the state. We're so lucky and thankful to be a part of that. For those that don't know, the Nexus line owns the transmission line, and that's that high voltage transmission line. All those in the world know that we need more transmission. We're so excited to own that asset, but it's only worth what you can drive for revenue. And so we'll be monetizing that, and that's what we're doing on the transmission. I get that question all the time. Why would you basically put wind? How can wind and coal get along? As it sits today, there's available capacity on that line. So it's our responsibility to make sure that we monetize that line in the future. And so that's why we're bringing on that wind. So the vision that I talked about 3 years ago, the vision of Coal Creek, and really important, every day we wake up, we look at Coal Creek and make sure we keep the eye on the ball and make sure we're efficient, make sure we're safe, make sure we're optimizing the best we possibly can at Coal Creek and also the Nexus. And the wind side of it, I fully anticipate that to be online probably in that 2026 timeframe, of which Discovery actually owns the wind. It's Apex. We don't own it. We're going to be providing transmission service for them. But the real important one is we're here to talk about today is the carbon capture. And for those that don't know, we had started the FEED study prior to us owning it. And some people may say that's crazy. We fully anticipated to get this across the finish line a lot, although we had a lot of naysayers out there saying you're never going to get this thing purchased. We were so excited for the state of North Dakota. Everybody in the state was polling. We had some friends in Minnesota that didn't want this to happen. We were able to overcome that. And we're so thankful after over a year of operation to be able to just say that we are executing on our plan and our vision. And so the carbon dioxide storage side of it is one that's, we got a grant, and that will be starting here soon. One of the other things that I'm really excited about is the FEED study, which we fully anticipate that to be done here in the first quarter of 2024. And there's going to be a lot of things, and I know that the grounds at Minnkota and all the work that they have done, and I'm so thankful for these pioneers, entrepreneurs, people that are looking at this the same way that we look at this as being a value that we can actually learn together. This isn't a competition. I don't look at it as a competition at all. I think the state of North Dakota will solve this. They've been working on this for 20 years. And now is the time with the 45Q and where we see that opportunity in EOR in the future. So I ultimately look at carbon as a commodity. It's a value. How do we bring that to a beneficial use in the future? Right now, the price signal says 45Q at $85 a ton. The future will be an EOR, absolutely. And you look at the value of what that's going to bring, because ultimately, at the end of the day, North Dakota takes 10% of the revenue associated with the oil. And you start looking at that, we have stranded about 6 billion barrels of oil out there. And if we can capture that with EOR, you guys can run those numbers. It's pretty significant value back to North Dakota in jobs and creation. So our goal from day one was not to go ahead and purchase Coal Creek and just go ahead and run it as it was. It was bringing the extrinsic opportunities to it, optimizing. And for those that may not know, we have one thing that's very excited to talk about, and the role that the state has been is on the FGD and the bottom ash. That was simply, you may have saw in the news that the EPA was attacking us on our liner issue in Raise 91 at the plant. And we always anticipated going dry in the future, but we wanted to say, how can we take this material, make it as a beneficial use? And what we're doing is we're taking the bottom ash, we're grinding and blending with our fly ash. That fly ash business at Coal Creek is tremendously valuable for us. But then we're taking the FGD side of it and taking it from a sulfite to a sulfate and making that into gypsum for another beneficial use. So you have two products that we used to just bury that we're now going to be taking to the market, and that revenue goes back to Coal Creek Station. So when I talk about carbon, I really, truly believe that the future, if we can go ahead and all pull in the same direction in North Dakota to get this across the finish line, this is going to be a tremendous opportunity, and there's no state that's going to lead this much, more so than North Dakota and all the work that everybody is doing on it. So I think I was only supposed to talk for 2 minutes, but I got a little long-winded there, so I'll go ahead and let Craig.
You're fine, Stacy. 10 minutes. You did just fine. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks for what you're doing. Thank you for innovating. And it's hard to keep Stacy just to talk about one part of what they're doing at Rainbow. You can hear They're into every different aspect of it, and it's very exciting to see you operating that plant. Craig, so when was the first time you were on a panel or at a meeting talking about Project Tundra? I know it predates the 7 years I've been involved in state government, so you're not a, this isn't the first time people have heard Project Tundra, but if you could answer that question, then let us know where you're at on the project.
Sure. First time we talked about Project Tundra was 9 years ago, and the project has had quite an evolution. The story of a carbon capture project is overcoming obstacles, certainly. Obstacles that magically get lifted occasionally, as what happened with the IRA, changed from $50 to $85 just recently, last year. And in those types of things, while sometimes unexpected, take a project that may be marginal and turn it into a project that's possible. So not without a lot of technical considerations, certainly, as you go through a feed study. That seems like, I was thinking on the way over here, not one day turns out like you think it's going to turn out because things shift constantly. Brent, I can take that. I'll take a step through it. So I'll just briefly go through where Minnkota is with Tundra, why we pursued it, and what the status is right now. Just generally, if you came to one of these conferences 8-9 years ago, the attitude was significantly different. It was palpable, and we all felt it, right? Because there were a ton of environmental regulations heading our way, capped off by the Clean Power Plan. And notably, the Clean Power Plan would have been effective the first year in 2022 had it stood, and these plants would have been running at less than 50% capacity, which is really the death knell for plants that are designed to run at full load and provide base load service. There have been several versions of carbon regulation coming our way. They've variously been stayed and withdrawn, depending which way the political winds go. But we have a new version on the table, right, that is hugely consequential as well. And whether or not that'll pass legal muster remains to be seen. We don't think it will, actually. But just generally, we look at carbon-constrained future, and we believe, I think everybody in this room believes it's happening, and now it's just how we adapt to that. And it really comes down to reliable and dispatchable resources. A significant myth is that the grid can run on renewables, wind, solar, and battery alone. It can't. And for people in our neck of the woods, it's really a life or death sort of thing, as they found out even in Texas a couple years back. So when we talk about grid reliability, this is a slide from MISO and kind of tells the story of the overall capacity or overall nameplate megawatts in MISO continues to rise, mostly on the strength of new renewables coming into the system. But the accredited capacity goes down, and that's basically a result of baseload resources retiring. So sooner or later, this becomes a huge problem, and occasionally it becomes a problem now. It'll probably be more frequent as we move forward, which makes maintaining baseload resources even more important. As you look just macroscopically at CO2 intensity in pounds per megawatt hour, coal is generally about a ton per megawatt hour. Simple cycle gas and combined cycle gas, somewhere less than that. The grid itself is about 885 pounds of CO2 per megawatt hour. You look at Project Tundra, which the number 113 there represents a 95% removal from the 2250. So Young 2 with Tundra is the lowest carbon intensity firm resource that Minnkota could look at. Stacy mentioned that the state is set up well. A lot of pioneers laid the groundwork for what we're seeing today, these opportunities to capture carbon. The expanded 45Q certainly plays a big role in that. Also should say we have not only excellent state support, but we also have excellent local support, and that's a 50-year proposition for Minnkota, being a member of the Oliver County community. That extends over to our pore space owners as well. The other key thing is this is a stepping stone to the bigger picture, which is really unlocking EOR potential someday in North Dakota and increasing our recovery of the original oil in place, for sure. Projects like this don't happen without supportive leadership. Our board of directors and MAC totally on board with running this to ground. And also, projects like this are not really possible, at least in the preliminary stages, without the support of the Lignite Research Council, Lignite Energy Council, the North Dakota Industrial Commission, and the DOE. And that really helps leverage the dollars that we've spent to date on the project, getting to understand carbon capture, what it looks like, has been invaluable to us. So where are we now? We're presently working on a compressed feed study with MHI and Kiewit. That was announced back in June. And we started earlier this year, actually started last October with a bridging study. And our intent is to have this feed study done as well at the end of the first quarter in 2024. It's a little different than a typical feed study in that we are negotiating an EPC contract simultaneously with MHI and Kiewit, who will form a consortium to build the project. At the end of the feed, we will receive a lump sum turnkey price, an execution contract, and a ready-to-execute EPC contract. So just looking at technology progression, this is about a 2x from Petronova. And although Tundra has some unique features that I think also Coal Creek or Rainbow is looking at, are steam integration with the plant and 2-unit operation. So those are the unique things, and maybe the more technological risk, different coal than Petronova. But this is only a 2x to 3x to 4x scale up. And this is totally within the realm of reasonableness as you look at scaling up a technology. We have 2 storage facilities permitted. The Dakota Carbon Center West was just received permit orders yesterday from the Industrial Commission. These 2 sites have the capacity to store about 222 million tons of CO2. This is more than Tundra would need in 20 years. There are commercial opportunities available there as well. So the acts that made the most difference to us was the Inflation Reduction Act. The bipartisan infrastructure law established the Office of Clean Air Demonstrations within the DOE, which has come out with a funding opportunity announcement in February for gas-based, industrial-based, and coal-based resources. We did apply for that in May, and that's up to $350 million funding, grant funding. And then the other important thing is the Clean Sustainable Energy Authority established here in North Dakota, and that is also a key element to the financial stack, which is a loan, and Minnkota so far is at $250 million in loans when we need them and when we make a positive final investment decision. We do have a partner in development, and this was also announced back in June, and that's TC Energy. TC Energy is a Canadian company that ships, that touches, I think, 25% of the natural gas shipped across North America. They, like us, have interest in carbon reduction projects, and they are an excellent partner for us to take through development and potentially into an ownership group. So looking at schedule, these things start with feasibility, and as you continue through feed, this is our second feed that we've done. Carbon safe on the storage side. All of these projects have been participated in by the state of North Dakota and the DOE, and And another thing I should point out is we have a world-class research institution here in North Dakota, and that is the EERC, which has done a fantastic job, both well before we started looking at tundra and now as we move through tundra. A great resource for us, along with a lot of other very qualified consultants that we have on board. So we're really looking at wrapping up the FEED second quarter, about April 1st, making an investment decision in the second quarter of the coming year. So our job now is to complete the FEED, complete the EPC contract. We have completed the West Site Class 6 permitting. The North Dakota, as you know, has primacy over that program. It doesn't make the process any less rigorous, but the great thing is the DMR sticks to a schedule as you walk through the permitting process. We hope to achieve the DOE demonstration funding. We're expecting notification any day on that. Another important thing is this idea of managing public relations. And as projects move toward success, inevitably, people who don't believe that the projects have merit start attacking. And often it's with misinformation. And I think we all have to be keyed into responding to those appropriately and correcting the record when we can, because these projects are so familiar to us that we think everybody has the understanding we do, and it's just not the case. So I think that is one thing we have to pay attention to as these projects move closer to reality.
Thank you, Craig. So FID in that last line was final investment decision, quarter 2, 2024. So we're getting a lot closer. So you're anticipating the way you're working through the work with TC and Kiewit Mitsubishi, is that, and the financing, is that final decision might be a little more than 6 months from now?
Correct. A lot of work to do between now and then, obviously. There are things that I'm sure will come out in the discussion, but key things that are it's kind of an unfortunate intersection right now with inflation, escalation, supply chain, things picking up after COVID. Hopefully one of two things can happen, and I hope it's the first, not the second. The first is that suppliers get spooled up to where they were before COVID. Secondly, and we talk about this tongue-in-cheek, but a good recession might help too, to drive demand down and increase supply. But those will be key hurdles to jump over, is what the ultimate cost and deliveries of project components are.
All right, thank you, Craig. Jason, this might not be what you expected, but I'm going to ask you a question. So based on listening to this and with Craig's timeline, not to put any pressure on, but a year from now, they might have made the thumbs up final investment decision and actually have construction happening, and Stacy will be that much closer to the final decisions there and project design and feed studies, etc. So you will be able to say the same as ethanol and oil, in that we have an active project. And so then, what do you see with tying those three groups together? I know you and I have talked about this, so I just want to pull some of that out. But I think what feels like it's missing right now is we're likely preaching to the choir of lignite industry in here a bit. But I can say this because I was just at the Petroleum Council annual meeting a week or two ago, and a lot of preaching to the choir in there as well. But Senator Patton, how much did CO2 come up at that conference? Same thing. But they're already quietly doing EOR. They're planning on the future of what it looks like to do enhanced oil recovery in the Bakken. EERC's been working on this for years. They're concerned about what's happening in the public sphere of NIMBY and negative attitudes towards the CO2 itself, whereas it's plain and simple a business decision for the oil industry. Same here. So what do you see like for potential for working together with cross-industry for next year?
I think what all of the industries and stakeholders have in common is the need to better define the value of CO2, the commodity value of CO2. And I actually looked up the definition of a commodity, which is a raw material or primary agricultural product that can be bought and sold, such as copper or coffee. At its most basic level, that is what CO2 is right now. It may also be a waste in the eyes of some people, but we have to have a laser focus on viewing CO2 as a commodity. And in speaking to engineers, many engineers at least, I made a rough estimate that I hope you appreciate, which is infrastructure is to wealth as velocity is to energy. The commodity has a value right now that has not been monetized. We need to build the infrastructure to monetize that commodity and allow it to get to the market where it is most valued. The initial investments have been made through the research councils, and now we're in the phase of building that infrastructure to get it into the field where it can ultimately receive that value. We also need to be cognizant, all three of those groups, that commodities have different values in different places. The commodity value of an item inside North Dakota might be different than outside North Dakota. The infrastructure is where you link up the commodity with its highest value. And the more we can do to make the monetization of the commodities that we possess possible, likely, and probable in the future, the more beneficial our industries will be. But I don't think all three of those industries have aligned to the point they need to yet on the commodity value of CO2, on the potential to turn that, going from potential energy to kinetic energy, that potential wealth into monetized wealth through the application of infrastructure. And I think that is the challenge of our day.
Thank you, Jason. I would agree. How do you see the Industrial Commission's effort to combine the three industry groups and research councils and moving forward with communication about the CO2 potential? Do you see that as wise? Is it preliminary? Is it going to be inflammatory with what's happening with the CO2 and the ethanol industry? Where do you see that effort going?
I think what the Industrial Commission was trying to do is get everybody in the same room and accelerate that alignment. And I think that's the benefit of what they were trying to do, is to jumpstart that alignment. Whether it happens the exact way that they envisioned or not, I think that alignment is happening. I know we are having conversations with different stakeholder groups to align on what that might be. But at the end of the day, the Industrial Commission envisioned $300,000 worth of alignment and execution. And that is not nearly enough to make the impact that needs to be felt. So the rest of that, we need to take what the Industrial Commission did and use that to springboard into something much more meaningful. There needs to be a bigger effort to talk about the value of CO2 to North Dakota, and I think the Industrial Commission got the ball rolling, but it's up to us to really get it across the finish line, because without the public being able to envision what the benefit of this resource is, we're just not going to get them to do anything other than the bare minimum, which is, maybe the completion of the projects on the drawing board right now, but never the decades worth of wealth creation that are possible.
Right. And what it looks like today is landowners and the agricultural side need to be brought into the mix to the same level of buy-in and looking at it as an opportunity like the coal and the oil side.
Absolutely.
All right. So we did pretty well for the initial intro, so good job. Didn't have to do any turning off mics or anything there, Stacy. So now we're into Q&A, and I think we talked about uncertainties. Let's go right into this one. So, myths and myth busting, educating policymakers, etc. Let's just continue with what Jason and I have been going back and forth on. What do you, and I'll just ask all three of you, I'll go with Craig first. What communication is needed from Project Tundra and Minnkota standpoint to help with myth busting? And that might be public, it might be with legislators in either state that you operate. Broad answer I'm looking for, not specific.
Yeah, I think certainly you have to communicate more, not less. We take for granted what people know about our projects, and you can't really do that in this space. As far as broad myth busting, there's this idea among so many people that the grid can be sustained by renewables only and batteries. And until we have a disaster for which we'll be blamed we need to educate people on the value of having spinning resources behind all that. The other thing is one of the lines that's out there is that but for carbon capture, these units would be shut down. And I think they just don't understand the long-term view that we have about these resources. These resources are presently projected to be on our books for another 20 years. And it's not because of carbon, but for carbon capture, it's not that we would shut down. Yet that's the presumption that many make. The other thing is the value of the tax credit. And really, it's difficult for folks to understand that the value of the tax credit, just like for direct air capture, hydrogen hubs, and everything that's being looked at right now, the value of the tax credit in our case fully builds the project, fully operates the project for a 12-year period with pretty much a rate neutral effect on ratepayers. And that is a myth that's out there that you see in printed media a lot, that the rates to our member owners are gonna double. And I don't know on what basis they say that, but those are the types of myths that we need to respond to so that there's understanding of what the basis is of these projects.
Thank you. So there's a lot more complexity for a generation co-op to be considering this, for an independent power producer to be considering this. You've got to communicate on the fact that the grid can't be handled with renewables alone, despite that's the direction that it's actually heading at very high levels of policymakers, which is very concerning. So you are interested in keeping the grid where it needs to be for your customers, but also you mentioned cost to the ratepayer, so that's very important to you. So there's other rationales and justifications for the 45Q and for the tax credits that sometimes you don't hear in the public debate. There's a reason why all this has to fit together. Number one being we need to keep the grid so that it's resilient, so it's there when we need it on the cold days, but also cost. There's not an appetite out there in a period of inflation for the taxpayer, for the ratepayer to say, yeah, go ahead, double my rate. Let's get greener. That is just not the case anywhere. So thank you for that. In addition to the CO2 and try to undemonize the CO2, that's what Minnkota has in front of it. Stacy, how about you?
Well, as being an independent power producer, we don't have the luxury to go ahead and if we make a mistake to pass this on to the consumer, we got to eat it, right? So this has to be a business that makes sense. 45Q makes sense. I look at CO2 as a commodity, but to lean on what Craig was talking about, the importance of these base load reliable generators, really what's very, very key to owning a power plant, a base load unit, is there's two revenue components. There's an energy and there's a capacity component, right? Those are the two. There's some ancillary services that Julie was talking about, but those are the two primary. The capacity market needs to send the signal, meaning those that are resilient day in and day out, that are performing when it's 20 below out and there's no wind, need to get paid. And we're doing everything in our power, and MISO's working towards it because they see this. They see the writing on the wall that it doesn't look good. If we continue to build out these renewables, the lights are going to come off. And so we really look at the capacity market as a massive opportunity for Coal Creek. But the energy market, as we see it right now, is a subsidized market. And how is it a subsidized market? It's the renewables. They're being subsidized. And unfortunately, when you need them the most, they're not there. But I always have my big brother to back me up if I ever get in a fight, right? If it really gets really dirty out there, I can pull them in. And that's the base load coal generation in North Dakota. And so the myths that I see out there, I hear out there, one of them is this not a waste? It's a commodity. Another one is it safe? Basin has quietly been doing this for over 20 years. They've been sending their CO2 up to Boundary Dam for EOR. And you talk to some of the environmental guys that they don't like us even talking about fossil fuels at all. Well, I can assure you North Dakota is a fossil fuel state. Rainbow is running as fast as it can towards fossil fuels because we know how important it is for our country's security, for our safety, and to make sure that the prosperity of our country has been driven through fossil fuels. And you've all heard me say this multiple times about the primary three most important things in the United States is freedom. It's everything, right? They tried to take it away during COVID. They'll try again. We're not going to give that up. Number two, we got to have the best of the best middle class, the strongest, the best of the best. And number three, we can never give up our competitive advantage. That competitive advantage is low energy costs. And as I shared last week, when we look at this and the sky's falling and they say renewables will drive down prices, that's all BS. Terribly. Yesterday, I think one of the comments was that Germany had $500, I think, Jeff, you mentioned $500 a megawatt around the clock for 2023. That's true. That's about 10 times more expensive than we have here in the United States. Well, we'll go broke. The country will go broke on that. So they have to outsource all their manufacturing and everything else to where? Most likely China. Really, if we're going down the direction, are we willing to accept that energy is going to be 3 times more expensive in the future? And the answer to me is no, because it hurts everybody in this room. It hurts everybody in manufacturing. Everybody touches energy. And we don't have to go to Germany to look. We can just go to California. Call up your cousin Vinny in California and ask him what he pays per megawatt in California. It's 3 times what you pay in North Dakota. North Dakota is blessed to have the pore space, have the administration, have the government, have the lignite. We can capture CO2 safely. We can use it as a resource, as a benefit in the future. Why wouldn't we do it? These same conversations, Brent, that we're having today, as I shared earlier, are the same conversations we had in the Bakken when we started talking about fracking. It's exactly the same thing. And I look at, when you start talking about AI, and I know that's the buzzword, the power demand in the future is going to be massive. If we think we're going to go towards AI, the amount of power we're going to need, we cannot be shutting off any baseload generators. And so we're excited to be in that space. We see the future on the blockchain technology side of it. It reminds me of where we were in 1996 for dial-up, the internet. When we had those, the old days, we already forgot about that because we want it like this. But that's where we're at in blockchain. And so when we start talking about Web3, we start talking about where we're going, will North Dakota lead? And I believe we will. We have everything we need in North Dakota to do it, but we have some headwinds. We have to educate. Craig, you mentioned about education. The more we can be in front of people, the more we can talk to people, the more that we can educate those people, the better off we will be. And that we look at this as a tremendous revenue source long-term for North Dakota. And there's no question if there's one state that's going to lead it, it's going to be North Dakota. But we do have the challenges, and the one that I said this last week on the panel, is like, if we could have everybody go up to the ERC and see all the great work that they've done for the last 20 years. I was at a P-Corps conference, and get everybody educated to where we're at and where we're going. I know I was so excited to see it, and they did a wonderful job up there. And so if anybody ever gets an opportunity to go visit the ERC and to learn more about carbon capture, that's the place to go. And so I think one of the big key, though, Brent, is can this be done safely? And the answer is yes.
Thank you. You are ready for the debate stage. I think we'll have to copy some of those talking points and move them up to that in the third Republican debate. So seriously, think about who won in the Bakken. The middle class, those of us in the middle class in Western North Dakota, the average teacher pay went from $30,000 to $60,000, let alone a grown man trying to fight for a $10 an hour job at the local Senate station. All of a sudden, it's $100,000 jobs around. And somehow this conversation is not getting through to all of our friends out west, let alone the rest of the state. Jason, I want you to touch on what Jason and I kind of refer to as the unholy alliance, that the battle against CO2 right now that's happening is the far left, and Stacy alluded to the far left on their thoughts on this, but it's also our friends on the right side of the political spectrum. And I don't know where we're falling down on communicating that this is the way to save coal plants. That's a good thing for all of us. This is a way to get more oil out of the ground. That's better for all of us. It's a way to sell more ethanol at a higher price. That's really good for all of us that are corn farmers. So again, are we falling prey to a conversation from the other side, or what is it exactly?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, just a couple weeks ago, the Dakota Resource Council hosted an event for actually a South Dakota Republican legislator in southern North Dakota in Emmons County. So what does that tell you about how this conversation has changed and who really is benefiting from the chaos when the Dakota Resource Council is hosting an event to teach policymakers and the public about our industry? It demonstrates that those messages of safety, of whatever it is, are being driven by folks who don't have our future in mind. And they view this as an opportunity to do what they couldn't do through regulatory means or through access to finance, which is shut the industry down. And I think the more we can do to make the case, the value proposition for our state and our people, as well as talking about who benefits from it being shut down and who really are the voices that want to shut it down, what is their motivation, then we can make some progress there. But I think people get caught up in the motivation of the policy change behind the 45Q, that they hear the word climate change, and that takes over their brain, despite the fact that the value of the commodity has changed because of the policy choices that have been made. We don't have to agree with the policy choices that have been made in order to pursue the economic opportunity that now exists, as well as we need to not be short-sighted and say this is a 5-year project or 10-year project of sequestration and the only true value is in EOR. I use this example. If you got a square field to fence in for your cattle and the federal government wants to pay for your first quarter of fence, you should take them up on the offer. You still got to fence in the rest of it. That's what they're doing. They're offering to pay for the first 10 years of our infrastructure. After that, we'll be turned loose to continue to monetize it. We should take them up on that offer not once, but every opportunity possible.
All right, thank you for that. So we're going to be able to take Q&A here, so be ready for questions to ask any of the four of us. But the last question we have on here, what are the top lessons that you've learned in getting to this point that you are in communication about your projects? And so even though we have a long ways to go on debunking some of these things and more of the conversation Jason and I have been having here, but we've already learned a lot of lessons. And I'll let Craig go first. What have you learned in the 9 years for top lessons in getting your communication out?
I think it's really about belief in the concept as a, we look at our plants as, our plants are simply the backbone of our energy supply at Minnkota, along with 30% of the Coyote Station. So the biggest lesson learned is don't be stuck if you seem to run into a wall on a technical issue, a financial issue. We've been nothing but resilient, and that's how you have to be with these projects on a long-term basis. Obviously, working 9 years on a project causes internal fatigue, but ultimately, it's amazing to me how a lot of people working together can really shift the momentum on a project in a favorable way. So it would be easy to do a 10,000-foot look at a project like this and say, wow, it's a pretty big lift for us. But on the opposite side, you look at it and say, this is an important resource for us. We've invested in it. It's reliable. It's resilient. Like Stacy said, it's not subject to cold weather operational difficulties. It's not subject to extremely high fuel prices when push comes to shove, like natural gas. It employs 360 people between the mine and the plant. Predictable costs. There's so many reasons why you shouldn't give up on resources like that, and not only strand value in those resources, but pay to build new resources and bring those into your system. So I think that's really the lesson. Almost every issue is surmountable, and if you believe in the concept and the value it adds to your company, keep moving forward, because if you stop now, you've just stranded a lot of work. And we've gotten to the point where, as I was mentioning earlier, there are daily challenges, but you get through them, and you hire good people, you get good consultants, and you find a way to work around it. And sometimes, even as I said, with the supply chain issues and things like that, they're going to be what they're going to be, and we're going to have to work our way through that through a management of risk as we move toward a financial investment decision.
It seems like Minnkota worked on the why, worked really hard on the why, and then communicated it out to your co-ops, to your employees, and the how has been evolving. Some of those partners have changed as you've gone. The financing has looked differently. Just in the years I've been involved, tax credits have changed, financing options have changed, but because that why has been resolved and everyone's bought in that we need to improve the young, we need to add years to it, we need to answer the CO2 concern, and so, yeah, congratulations on that. I think you've done a good job, and again, we all are waiting to hear that final answer 6 months or so. Stacy, you haven't had as many years in this, but I know you've learned a whole lot of lessons. I know there was a couple years before that point a year ago as well. But what are top lessons that you've learned in getting to the point you're at now in communicating the project?
Well, the number one lesson I've learned is I assume when I say it's a win-win-win across the board that everybody buys into it. I mean, the reality of what we did by purchasing Coal Creek and saving those jobs and the mine, and then not only just doing that, but taking it to the next level by doing carbon capture, the wind, and the data, I assume everybody looks at that as being good. And a lot of times it's and where we've fallen short is educating people on the topic we're talking about right now on CO2. And try to explain to them, and someone said the other day to me, they said, it's a commodity, it's a value. And they said, well, explain to me what a commodity is. I'm like, I got to go I got to start at a different level. I need to teach people on that level. And not that I'm trying to demean or anything like that. It's the reality of I assume what's going on in my melon, you guys are thinking the same thing. That's not the truth. And so when we looked at this project, we looked at carbon capture, working with MHI, working with Hewitt, the same groups, is one of the things that we've clearly identified where we have the luxury that we have a 96% capacity factor at Coal Creek. We're so blessed to have that unit in its performance day in and day out. But you need that same on the carbon capture. Single point of failures, that ain't good. You have a 70% runtime on carbon capture, you're going in the wrong direction. So when you're looking at the design side of it, looking at what's necessary on the redundancy, and there's some, cultural issues. You're working with, the Japanese. And it's working through that. And, Craig, you talk about the challenges each day. I had to change it to say these are opportunities because it's every day. It's every day you're going around or over and stuff like that, but you're continuing to make progress. And my encouragement for the state of North Dakota is get people educated to what we're trying to accomplish so they fully see it. They may still not agree. Maybe they don't maybe they're allergic to money. I don't know. Maybe they're allergic to the fact that, oil isn't important for North Dakota. I don't know. But I can tell you from living here my whole life, they're smarties here. We will figure it out here. And the more they're educated, the better off we'll be because they'll drive it. And where I've fallen short is also educating my own staff and working with them to truly look at the full broader picture, the macro picture of where we're going. One of the things that I'm very careful on, it's one that you don't overpromise and underdeliver. You know, as I say over and over again, you earn the trust of your people through execution. That's how you earn it. Not from talking up here, it's through doing what you say you're going to do. And sometimes when the road's like this, there can be a lot of people in your group say, oh, I'm uncertain of, you know, where will we get to the finish line? And so I encourage our staff always to be transparent from day one, what we're going to do, where we're going to go, recognizing that we're going to have battles along the way. I have 100% confidence in my team and the state of North Dakota to get this across the finish line. But the biggest challenge I see is, as I see it right now, that I'm hearing, is the educational side of it.
Thank you. I agree. And that's never really done. But you've got a lot to explain too. So you have to explain why wind and data and the HVC DC line, whatever you say it, the DC line I'll say is easier for me to get the letters out. The DC line to Minnesota, and all these things are different pieces than what Craig has, but they all play a part. You're trying to maximize the asset, make as much money as you can, but you're also asking questions. I know you've asked questions like, can you turn the CO2 generation off when you need those electrons on days when it's really cold? You know, does that throw all your compliance issues that come that way? So I know you're going to need to have direct communication, as you have, on capacity and on issues like that with the congressional delegation and legislators too.
I'll just add, if you don't mind, Brent, and one of that is what he's talking about there is that if you have the carbon capture and you're running the capture side and the market's screaming, you can shut that off and take that to the market. So you have credited capacity. In essence, when MISO looks at that, it's like having a gas peaker on the sidelines. That when they need it the most, when the world's doesn't look that bright, it's there. And that is really important for MISO to have that. Craig had mentioned some about the reliability side about these grids. This is happening, and we had one little touch of it back in 2021 with Winter Erie, what happened down in Texas. I just mentioned that California's been having debacles for a good period of time. Texas has it. Last year, out in PJM, also the Southeast, it wasn't good. And at that point, there was also gas not being delivered. The gas market wasn't performing also at that time, and there was penalties, billions and billions of dollar penalties. And so we have brownouts, so we have blackouts. I say this over and over again, when we get in this space, at the end of the day, utility should be reliability, reliability, reliability. The intermittent resource, and that's clearly what wind and solar is an intermittent resource. Do I personally think it can play a role? I do. Can it play a base load role? Not a chance. Not even close. And if you get too far over your skis and you get too much renewables, this will be a common event. And we hear about it in North Dakota. I'm not as concerned about the summer as I am about the winter. Winter, people will die. Summer, you'll just sweat. And you start looking at the numbers associated with the cost of what took place in Texas. Billions and billions and billions of dollars. We have the resources in North Dakota. We can manage them correctly. We have to do a better job on communicating that with these ISOs, the RTOs, the MISOs, the SPPs, the PGMs. We have to play that role in it. I think the biggest indicator to play that role is make sure we're sending the right price signals. And that price signals comes through the capacity market. And they've been tripping over themselves for many, many years. But now that MISO is willing to step up and bring public comment to FERC, that's a very important part. They didn't do that in the past. They were very neutral. But they're seeing it. And it's up to us to continue to push that and drive that, because that's the price signal. The renewables don't like this, because what happens is you have more value to your asset. They always say, coal can't compete, coal can't compete. Coal will rip the face off of wind right now in the market. Coal is the cheapest. Now, we have a subsidized market and the energy side of it, but if you include the capacity and the energy, and what I'm seeing in contracts for the forward on the wind, they're expensive. And so it reminds me of many years ago when people were just getting into wind and they're like, oh, we'll just put our toe in there and we're going to pay $78 a megawatt and it's only going to be a little bit. And then through subsidy, it pushed those prices down. I'm seeing the curve. And that curve is driven through the IRA, through these subsidies, more subsidies now to the cooperatives. And so the market, I will just promise you to tell you that it will continue to change. But anybody that wants to have a conversation about energy going down and that it's cheaper by doing renewables, I want to have a conversation with them and really, truly represent what is that cost for that. And I just mentioned that we have a 400 megawatt wind project. I'm not against wind, but really what's really important is for us to protect these wonderful assets. There's one thing that I think that we lose focus on is we can look out the back door and see, I know what my price is going to be for 40 years. Try that with natural gas. Try that with natural gas this winter. I mean, a forward 5-year, 10-year natural gas market futures, if you want to get a contract for 10 years, 15 years, you know how much expensive that would be? People won't price it. Even the biggest and the baddest of the banks out there won't do that. And so I kind of got on a rant a little bit there, Brent, but those are some of the things that are going through my mind. But I want to just emphasize the importance of these coal assets in North Dakota. We can't lose focus of those. We need to monetize those through the capacity and energy market.
Thank you for your leadership at Coal Creek and at the Young, and we all owe you a debt of gratitude for moving this forward, and we all need to commit to the education and the communication. So with that, we have time left. We actually have the rest of the half hour. If there's questions, quite an opportunity to ask questions to Craig and Stacy, Jason, myself if you want. Mike will bring the microphone around.
I think I've had a question after just about every presentation in this conference, but the one thing I wanted to ask about, Colonel West mentioned it yesterday. He used the term intentional ignorance, willful ignorance, and people are just not paying attention to what you're saying. I think there are financial interests behind the renewable sector who are being disingenuous. They know what you're saying is true, but they won't admit it. And he talked about, doing ads, getting on social media, telling the story. I'm a former journalist, kind of still a journalist, but to me, one of the biggest enemies we have right now is the mainstream media. Is there a way to really force this conversation in front of the mainstream media who refuses to report the truth?
Well, Jeff, I don't know if that was for me or not. I agree with you on it. I think that the importance of continuing to have communication is really important. And with the renewable side of it, they don't like when they say, well, you're just going to bring up reliability. And I'm like, well, yeah, I'm going to bring it up because that's everything. That's what we're trying to do is keep the lights on. And so they have no answer to that. And so they're not going to fight with you. They're just going to say, you're just going to continue to bring up reliability. And then they always do say about the low cost. That's gobbledygook. That is silliness. It is not. I can show you over and over again. We're in the market. We know what the costs are. We know what the PPAs. We know what the manufacturers. That is not truly. I mean, you look at the cost, but then you got to build a gas turbine to back that up, and then on top of it, you got to build transmission. And so those are the things. Is the money is on that side of the fence, though, and that's the truth. That they're driving that. Wall Street is driving that. And through the ESG, global warming conversations and stuff like that, we're not having those conversations. Our administration, as it sits right now, is not doing us any favors. There's a war on fossil fuels. We'll get through it. I have no doubt about it because it's our livelihood. Without it, we don't live. And how do we go ahead and get our message out? We got to have our people, though. When I look at what's at Coal Creek, when I look at what's at Falkirk, we have to do a better job on educating them, not to get into a fight, not to go ahead and smash and smear and all that. Let's get into a true discussion and topic, and talk about it. I hear some of the craziness myself, even in North Dakota. on it, and it's not being reported correctly. The one specifically I'm talking about is CO2 and how it can be safe, how it can be of value, how we need to look at it way past we're taking other states' waste. I mean, for us to fully develop the Bakken, we should be begging for all that CO2 to come to North Dakota. We're not going to have enough CO2 to get all that oil out of the Bakken in the future. That's a needle mover. But the one that I think on the ag side of it, because we're an ag state, we have to do a better job. We really do, because ag, they're no dum-dums. They do buy this thing called fuel also. If we go down this road, when I'm talking about energy prices going up 3 times, I am as serious as a heart attack. I mean, that is going to happen. It has to happen. All of the costs are going up. And are we willing to do that? So let's not get away from our low-cost, efficient baseload generators, and we need to continue to educate. But I think through, some of it also is through the school systems. I don't think it starts in your high school. It doesn't start in college. It starts that we need to do a better job even bringing these kids out to Coal Creek. I've never brought anybody out to Coal Creek or the Falkirk mine that don't say, wow, that is unbelievable what you guys do here. There's so much pride up there, and it's so safe, and they do so many things right. Even the DOE will come out there and say, wow, we never thought of it this way. We looked at the old coal mines out in Virginia, and now they're coming out of there. They're all full of coal. And so getting that opportunity to bring people out, continuing to educate, it takes time. I do think it starts when they're youngsters, and they need to be proud. I know our group at the plant, very proud to be, it's a great day to burn coal. We say it every day. And we can't be ashamed of it. We can't look at it and be ashamed that we're burning coal. This is a good thing. We're keeping these lights on. And so I wish I had that silver bullet to how we can turn that. I think administration-wise, someone asked the questions. I said, well, there's 2 things that affects people significantly. One of them is their pocketbooks. Unfortunately, when we get on the wrong side of the curve, it's too late. And the other one that affects it, which I hate even saying out loud, but is people have to die. And that is really bad, because that's what we're really talking about. If the lights, shut off in International Falls, Minnesota, people die. And that's truly what we're up against. It's not like, could it happen? It's happening. We are so close to Coal Creek's not running December 21st last year. Minneapolis is not happy. I mean, we're so thankful that it was running during those times of December 21st to the 25th. So.
I'd just add, as Stacy was talking, I was thinking when I was a young man, before I was in the coal industry and the power industry, I naively used to think, like probably many think, that what they read in the Bismarck Tribune or the Fargo Forum or Newsweek or Time Magazine is accurate. And as I got involved in the industry and I started reading these news stories about the industry, I realized they really didn't have a clue about how it operated and how it ran. And I think that is purely just a lack of interest in understanding what it is we're actually trying to accomplish as an industry, which is, our primary objective is to provide affordable and reliable energy to the consumer. And that is our mission. Another example I was thinking of was I participated in the Lignite Energy Teachers Conference for many years, giving plant-level environmental compliance reviews. And I remember about a year and a half after the Clean Power Plan came out, I asked a group of 100+ teachers in the room who had heard of the Clean Power Plan, and not one teacher raised their hand. And so it was an opportunity to provide at least them some feedback into whether, we can tell in the industry whether a rule is a $10 million rule, a $50 million rule. And when I told them the Clean Power Plan was likely a $1 billion rule just to Minnkota, some chins dropped. And it's I think Stacy's right that it has to start younger. It has to start with those of us who have an understanding of the industry that can express why these things are important to us, and to not be silent when misinformation is flying around. And we do appreciate MAC has taken a couple of steps lately to respond directly to misinformation. There's a compulsion in the media to often provide what they feel is balance, even if the argument is heavily weighted on what we see as the logical side. There's always an attempt to provide a soundbite on the opposite side, and that kind of perpetuates the misinformation that goes around in the media.
Yeah, and I would say the news media no longer necessarily reports facts and events. They have narratives, and then they tell you how you should feel about that narrative. So there is a void in the realm of facts that we can help fill, and it's incumbent upon us to educate our own people about what those facts actually are. And just following on the teacher seminar, one of the things that we've done recently, and Kay did a great job managing our teacher seminar for a long time, and now Retha has, one of the ideas that has evolved there, we learned that the school budgets only allow for one field trip per year. That's why a lot of our schools haven't been able to go do their field trip to the mine and the power plant. You talk to people 20 years ago, they all went. So we implemented a scholarship program that if a school wants to send a busload of kids, we'll pay for it. We would do that for every school in the state if they wanted to, because that's how important it is. It was just something that we discovered through ordinary execution of our teacher seminar, where this budgetary gap had, who knows why it happened. Through happenstance, it's hurting our industry. We took steps to fix it. We're going to continue to figure out how to increase the number of visits of those school kids, but this was an easy way that we saw to immediately start trying to turn that narrative around.
Yeah, I would encourage Jeff's organization, Jason's organization, and then whatever comes out of this industrial commission effort for communication, that it has to be more intentional. And it seems like we all like to just keep our nose to the grindstone and work in the fossil fuels industry, and then hope that nobody is looking, hope that no one is attacking, but it's happening. So being out there in a proactive way is very important. And both Jeff and Jason, I mean, you could have columns in the newspaper that would accept that. You could, we need to feed this information to Fox News, to Newsmax, to places that will listen to it, to Congress. I mean, when Kevin Kramer told me when the Coal Creek deal was starting up, he said, I tell you what, it's a very lonely room in the coal caucus. When you have Republican states like Iowa that don't care because they just have ethanol and corn, and they don't have oil and they don't have coal, that's tough. So it's lonely for the folks that are trying to bring the real information. And it's not misinformation. We're trying to bring real information out. So we all need to be in on it together. Are there any other questions for the panelists?
Thank you for being the visionaries, but I have one question about carbon, and maybe you can educate me on it. But we talk about carbon, which is essential to plant life, animal life, human life, is part of our DNA. So why do we want to keep burying this stuff that's essential to us? One, is it bad for us? Number two, what's the future going to look like if we take carbon, go to a zero carbon?
I'll give my preach that I give on this topic. So I've been on the radio so many times talking about this, but if you look at the bar charts of naturally occurring CO2 and man-made CO2, it's surprisingly tiny. The man-made CO2 is very tiny at the top of that bar, and then the line that shows how the Earth consumes the CO2 is almost the same height as that's naturally occurring, but the man-made ends up pushing it a little bit higher. So if this is something where there's a market for it, it's a commodity, it's a way to keep coal plants going, produce more oil without having more impact with the same amount of footprint, and this economy is taking off, people are willing to, and I say this is dumb whenever I'm asked, but if they want to pay twice the amount for ethanol because it has a zero carbon score, let them. But this is a solution that these industries are looking at, and it's not going to keep the plants from growing. Now, I'll put a caveat on that, and I like to joke on this, but we know how we are as human beings. If we get so good at direct air capture, and Google and Amazon, everybody starts putting direct capture units up everywhere, we as human beings could probably be capable of taking too much out of the air. But what they're all talking about is CO2 that they're generating themselves, the man-made CO2 part. That question is unanswered yet on the projects that are just doing direct air capture and then shoving it in the ground. And these projects also are looking at the ultimate goal of this, after the tax credit period for 12 years, is to utilize it for enhanced oil recovery. And CO2 is the best product that can be utilized for enhanced oil recovery. It's a solvent. It goes up into those fractures. It pulls more oil out. And they're looking at, in the Bowman area, of doubling the amount of recoverable oil on the same number of wells. And so that's a good business decision with CO2 as a product, as an industrial product, as an industrial solvent used for enhanced oil recovery. So I hope that helps some of it, because you don't hear this when you hear the public debate. You really are hearing, we know what CO2 is. It's necessary for plant growth. It's necessary for life. And the government's given a whole bunch of subsidy for it. Why? Who's making us do this? So it is a broader conversation. Thank you for the question. Anybody else want to take a
Yeah, I would
shot?
just say the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere right now has varied over millennia. And the projects on the table right now, and I think even the projects that would be able to envision, would never be able to take enough CO2 out of the atmosphere to materially change its impact on plant growth. However, putting it into the ground can materially change the wealth trajectory and prosperity of our state for generations. And I don't know why every single person in Congress or governors, why they vote the way they do on climate change legislation, but I know that the environment that they have created right now allows us to extend the life of the coal industry and create a huge economic opportunity in the oil industry for the next 40 years, 50 years, without having any detrimental impact on plant life, on human life, on our economy, on our environment, whatever. So I try and drown out the noise when those concerns are coming up, because we can't change the CO2 level enough to hurt the ag industry, but we can create opportunities for them to share in the economy that is being produced today.
For
Thank
one
you for the
last question here.
If the mercury and air toxic standards were to be passed, will that affect any of the upcoming projects, these exciting projects that you have highlighted?
Say those are definitely considerations, right? That along with regional haze, and there are other risks to the project, right? That we have to continue to track and continue to strategize for. But certainly, back during the Obama administration, there was a slide that a lot of people used called the train wreck slide, and it showed all the regulatory initiatives that were being followed on all fronts: air, water, waste. And I've seen a recent slide with kind of the same trajectory on it, and so those concerns are definitely real, and they're concerns we have to address as risks, right? And factor those into the overall decision making. So, and just the way these things work, a lot of this ends up being timing, right? If the political winds blow a different way in 2024, some of those risks might be mitigated. That's the issue with the political nature of the way these environmental regulations ebb and flow, and they've always been a whipsaw to the regulated industry, and when a regulation goes final, most of us don't rely on the outcome of litigation to make a decision on starting down the pathway of compliance, right? So therein lies the irreparable harm of the whipsaw of regulations being passed and then pulled back and redone. And ultimately, since we're a cooperative, all of our costs are passed 100% to our ratepayers. So those are important issues to us, and the ones you mentioned and others are on the radar as potential risks.
Yeah, I'd echo what Craig said there. They're on the list, but does that mean we're putting on the brakes? Absolutely not. You know, we look at this as we plan on fighting with the EPA for the rest of our lives. That is going to happen, and I don't anticipate anything magically changing with the administration. They come and they go in those things, and as Craig mentioned about 2014, 2015, these challenges, we're right back to the same challenges with these administration. I think that they're over their skis so far. The challenge in the court system, they're going to lose, no doubt. But the threat is there, creating uncertainty to the markets. And those that will kind of weeble wobble, and there's this big red easy button that other states like to push, and they'll hit it. And we in North Dakota aren't doing that. But we aren't slowing down. We're definitely aware of what the issues are at hand. We will address those. None of those are I shouldn't say they're not deal killers. They're all money grabs, right? They all cost, driving up, once again, prices.
And I think the question represents a good opportunity to talk about why it's important that we have these conferences and get together and try and speak as one voice, because all of our plants are different. They all have different chemistry mechanisms, compliance mechanisms. So the more we're talking and coordinating, the less likely it is that, someone could argue, let's push down mercury this way, which might have this impact over here, or shift this burden somewhere else. We all can work together to find the compliance mechanisms and the strategy that works together without, stirring up additional complexity that might come back to bite us in a way that we wouldn't even recognize until it was too late if we weren't in the same room talking about these challenges.
All right. Any last questions? Thank you for your patience and for staying for one of our last panels. We got any closing words? Stacy?
Great topic. My takeaway here is I'm so excited about what we're doing in North Dakota. I look at this as a tremendous opportunity. We have challenges. The leadership across the board all look at this. The CO2, the carbon management side of it, it's real. And one of the questions you asked earlier is, is this fantasy land? I will just tell you, the world is going to a carbon management world, if you like it or not. That's where it's going. Unfortunately, some people don't like it. I look at it and say, how can this be an opportunity for North Dakota? How can this be an opportunity for Coal Creek? How can we go ahead and extract that extra 6 billion barrels of oil that's sitting out here in the Williston Basin? How can this bring value also to the ag? They don't know it's going to bring value to them. Low energy cost is tremendously valuable to them, and their corn does okay with ethanol, also. So, my takeaway is some of these conferences and some of these discussions, some of these challenges, we always bring them up. But I also have to take a look back and say how many things that we're continuing to do well and continue to basically, take credit for some of the things that we're doing well. And I'm excited about the future of North Dakota. I'm excited about Coal Creek, Falkirk Mine, all these other opportunities. I love seeing the work that all the other utilities are also doing with Craig and Mac's leadership there. And when Jason talked about all of us as utilities or independent power producers coming together and working as a team, we're just going to need all of North Dakota pulling in the same direction. And the better we are at being out front of this, educating the people, the better off we're going to be, because we're getting challenged across the board, but we need to be united as North Dakotans.
Thank you. Greg?
Yep, and I would certainly echo all that. From Minnkota's standpoint, we really think that if carbon capture pencils out, it's the best course forward for us to preserve a great resource in the Young Station. the nexus of what has happened in the state of North Dakota over the last 15 years or so in laying the foundation for this, to me, makes the most likely projects to occur in North Dakota, which is saying a lot. We're punching way above our weight, and that's a credit to everybody who has worked on this issue over the last 15 years in a foresightful way to see what the future would bring. And the timing for EOR and things like that are simply not there right now. So in the meantime, we look at the tax credit as a way to get the ball rolling and sequester and have a neutral effect on ratepayers. But as you look to the future, in the long-term future of North Dakota, really setting the stage with projects like ours really set the stage for what can happen in the future as regards oil production. And I think that's the big prize, but there's infrastructure involved, there's other factors as to what the CO2 will be worth at that time. So we can't predict the future, we can't plan for the future. What we can plan for is what's right in front of us right now, which is not to do the utilization quite yet, but do the sequestration, and that's where Minnkota is. And from where we stand, it's time to get this technology demonstrated at a larger scale, and that's certainly our intention, should the numbers pencil out.
Amen. All right, Jason?
I would just say there's a lot of reasonable questions that yet remain to be answered, and I would just use that as an example of a very reasonable question. There are going to be more unreasonable answers that are given to you by the extremists to these reasonable questions. We have to have those reasonable answers ready, verified, and factual. It's harder than ever to find factual, unbiased information today. We need to find the trusted sources of information at the ERC. We're bringing another one up right now that have actually verified this information through practice, through engineering, and can have verifiable results about the safety, efficacy, and real-world impacts. If they sound like extremists, they probably are. Doesn't matter which side of the spectrum they're coming from. But the money, ironically, on this issue is only coming from one direction, to shut these projects down. And I don't think we should be dumb enough to let them succeed.
Right. And it's important to know these projects really work, and that's who's going to be up here next. But thank you for the experts on the stage, and these projects will be moving soon. They're far into the planning. They're ready to make final decisions. And Jason, thank you for your leadership. And again, thank you all for your attendance. Have a great rest of your time here.